Hi, I'm Brien Lundin, and I am at the Metals Investor Forum here in Toronto in a pre-PDAC event. Great conference here, a lot of good companies, a lot of eager investors, and one of the better companies here in my mind is Alaska Energy Metals, symbol AEMC on the Venture Exchange. My longtime friend, Greg Beischer, runs this company. Greg, this is a new rebirth. Really, it is a completely new company, about a year old now. And tell us, it's a fascinating story to me, how you came about to form this company by hearkening back to your early days as a geologist.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Great to see you again. And it really was exactly 1 year ago today. I came to this conference thinking somehow I have to make a change.
Yeah.
And so we did hatch this company, and we've made pretty unbelievable progress.
Yeah, I would agree on that, yeah.
But yeah, it's a brand new company for me, but my history with the project goes back to 1995 and my years as a young geologist with Inco. That was my first career, the biggest nickel mining company in the world at the time. And they sent me to Alaska to explore this exact same spot that we've now been able to reclaim. And back then, we first discovered the nickel, but it wasn't there in really rich concentrations, but things are different now.
Right.
And it turns out it's a very large nickel deposit. The grade is not strong, but it's very continuous, very homogeneous.
Yeah, and you say the grade's not strong, but there are other projects, similar projects, not a lot in the world because this is really extremely large. I would argue of strategic importance in its size. But there are other projects held in other companies, and they're valued at significant multiples to what your value is. They may be a little bit further along the development process, but one of the big value propositions for your company is simply closing the gap on the valuation of your project with similar ones.
Exactly so. Canada Nickel is an example. The people that are running that company are blazing a great trail for us to follow.
Yeah.
They've outlined a large deposit of similar metal concentration. Ours is perhaps a little bit stronger, but their market cap is 240 million. Ours is 33.
Right.
They're a couple of years ahead of us, but we're catching up rapidly. And it's been great for me to see them bring in strategic partners like Samsung, like Anglo American, Agnico Eagle Mines that give sort of a stamp of approval on their project. I think we'll have similar strategic investors soon. But that's it. I mean, we're going to catch up to them in terms of size of deposit, but I think we'll catch up in market cap valuation as well.
And that, again, is something that would have to multiply your share price considerably to get to that point. But you mentioned the word strategic, and I think another word that applies here is critical, because you have critical metals that are absolutely necessary for this new age of electrification of transportation, the whole EV trend that is going to present tremendous supply constraints and price constraints. So your deposit, the Nikolai project, the Eureka discovery, the Eureka deposit, is large, lower grade, and therefore it's more of an optionality play on rising nickel prices, which and other metals as well, which seems pretty apparent is going to happen and have to happen over the longer term.
Yeah, you could look at it definitely as an optionality play, but it's also a secure domestic supply for the United States.
Right.
I mean, our country is vulnerable to supply chain disruption. We're reliant on non-free trade countries to a large extent for our metal supply, nickel in particular. So I think it's strategic to have this metal right in our own backyard. And well, in less than a year, we've established that it's a very large deposit. In fact, I've got a pound of gold, right? A pound of nickel.
Right.
I've got a pound of nickel right here. We've established that there's 8 billion of these in the ground at our project with copper, cobalt, platinum, and palladium to go with it. So it is, to me, most important that it's at home on American soil
Yeah.
and could be metal for America's energy future.
Well, let's talk about the deposit now, because this is what gets exciting to me. When we started talking about this a year ago, you had two distinct deposits and a gap in between. And you were going to do some drilling to get the drill spacing closed up on the known areas, and then you were going to try to close that gap. You weren't completely sure that you were going to be able to close that gap with the drilling and get that included in your new compliant resource for the project. But sure enough, right? I mean,
Yeah, it was a very pleasant surprise, which,
Yeah.
you know, in our business don't happen all that often.
no.
So it was.
But the consistency of the mineralization is really what helped you out there.
This is it.
Yeah.
It's just this 300-meter thick, continuous, homogeneous slab of nickel sulfide mineralization. And because it's so homogeneous, we were able to carry the deposit across some fairly large spaces in drill holes. But yeah, we've turned two deposits into one great big one that's still open in both directions.
And what's the strike length now of the deposit?
4.2 kilometers long, and it's open in both directions.
And the identified trend now that you are fairly certain where you want to drill, where it extends along strike, is in total how long?
We can trace it intermittently for a total of 12 kilometers. Most importantly, though, I think that came out of our new resource calculation is that we confirmed our suspicion that there's a higher grade core in the center of the deposit that comes right to surface. And so that will really help with the early stage economics. We mine that higher grade first, get rapid capital payback, and the whole project will go much, much better.
Now, and that to me was exciting enough. That's why we recommended it in Gold Newsletter, because we saw that valuation gap between where you are now, and obvious that you can most likely close that gap over time by advancing the project of this extremely large, lower grade nickel deposit and associated metals. But when we were talking at your booth earlier, we were talking a bit about another exciting project, because the key in a project like Eureka, a deposit like Eureka, you want to find a higher grade core that would help the economics and advance payback earlier on in production. But if you can find a higher grade core, finding a higher grade core there is one thing, higher grade. But there's a nearby project that actually has high grade and really extraordinary grades from work that has been done already. Tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. That's something I've been working on for a while again. And it's part of the same project. We call it the Nikolai Project. There's the Eureka claim block. There's the Canwell claim block.
Yeah.
And Canwell, back in 1997, my crews found, when we were all with Inco, some really high-grade, massive sulfide mineralization at surface. Here's some of it right here. It's beautiful
amazing
stuff.
I held this up at your booth and I nearly killed myself. This is incredible. I hope I don't break it, or I don't drop it on my foot and break my foot.
Yeah, but yeah, it's well over 10% nickel with copper to go with it. But not only that, it's enriched in platinum and palladium and gold, but even the more rare platinum group elements like rhodium and ruthenium and osmium and iridium.
So this one
Beautiful
sample
stuff.
runs, let me read this off, 12.7% nickel, 3.8% copper, 4.4 grams per ton gold, 8.1 grams per ton platinum, 5.5 palladium, 0.3 grams per ton rhodium. I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah, that
and heavy.
The metal content in that, if you had a ton of it, would be in the order of $5,000 per ton.
Wow.
So if we were to find maybe 8 or 10 million tons of that, that would be a standalone ore body of great value. If it's smaller, it's still a fantastic starter pit for the overall larger bulk tonnage operation.
And back then, in your young geologist days, you were only able to get a short hole in there. And from the geophysics now, you missed the target.
That's what we see. We did a lot of work last summer on the surface to be ready to drill this summer. We've got some spectacular looking targets. I think there's a really good chance we're going to intersect some of this massive sulfide mineralization.
So what we're looking at here is 3 paths forward, I think, and that's the exciting part to me. You have closing the valuation gap, obviously confirming the potential size of the Eureka deposit, closing the valuation gap with similar deposits. You have an optionality play on the critical metals that are necessary going forward and are facing supply constraints against a tremendous demand curve. But this is something that is the real kicker to me, because this is going to come this summer. And if you confirm that target, the geophysical target underneath this, and you hit that high grade, that makes the numbers tumble for just about everything. If you can get enough here to get a starter project for quick payback, that brings Eureka, that huge resource, into economic reality today.
Exactly.
Potentially.
Yep.
But this summer is when that drill program is going to come.
Yep. Well, there's a saying in our business that grade is king, and it really is. I know that we can have outlined this enormous accumulation of nickel and the other accessory metals, but everything gets easier when you have high-grade material.
Yeah.
And I sure hope that our drilling this coming summer hits some of this material.
Well, that's going to be a great discovery story. I want to thank you for this gift of this paperweight from my desk. It's going to look great. Thanks so much. Thanks, Greg, for being with us today.
Thank you, Brian. All the best.